Indian and Chinese troops clash on disputed border again. For those of us that don't know the history behind this conflict, it becomes hard for us to understand the tension between the two nations who have recently become strong economic partners. First, let me provide you with the latest news covering this dispute. Then, I will go into why this dispute continues to happen and likely will not go away anytime soon. New Delhi, India. Indian and Chinese troops have clashed on their disputed Himalayan border, the first known incident between the two nuclear-armed Asian powers in nearly 2 years. In a statement, India's Ministry of Defense said soldiers from both sides sustained minor injuries in the face-off, which took place Friday in the Tawang sector in India's northeastern territory of Arunachal, Pradesh, a remote, inhospitable region that borders southern China. The 2,100-mile-long 3,379-kilometer disputed border has long been the source of friction between New Delhi and Beijing, with tensions escalating sharply in June 2020 when hand-to-hand fighting between the two sides resulted in the deaths of at least 20 Indian and 4 Chinese soldiers in Aksai Chin, Ladakh. In the latest incident, China's People's Liberation Army PLA troops contacted the line of actual control LAC, the de facto border, which was contested by Indian Army troops in a firm and resolute manner, according to the Indian Ministry of Defense statement obtained by CNN. Both sides immediately disengaged from the area, and the country's respective commanders there held a flag meeting to discuss the issue in accordance with structured mechanisms to restore peace and tranquility, the statement said. China has yet to comment on the incident officially. Speaking to members of parliament last week prior to the skirmish, Indian Foreign Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar said India diplomatically had been very clear with China that they will not tolerate attempts to unilaterally change the LAC, and that so long as they continue to seek to do that, and if they have built up forces, which in our minds constitute a serious concern in the border areas, then our relationship is not normal, Jaishankar said, in response to a question on Sino-Indian relations, adding that the military commanders continue to engage each other. India and China went to war over their border regions in 1962, eventually establishing the LAC. But the two countries did not agree on its precise location, and both regularly accused the other of overstepping it, or seeking to expand their territory. There have been a series of mostly non-lethal scuffles over the position of the border in the years since, including as recently as 2021, according to a statement from the Indian Army at the time. Now, some history behind the disputed region and why this conflict won't be going away anytime soon. The India-China border dispute is a long-standing territorial dispute between the two countries over the McMahon Line, a boundary that was drawn up between British India and Tibet in 1914. The dispute has its roots in a complex history between the two countries and has continued to be a source of tension and conflict to this day. The McMahon Line was drawn up as part of the Simla Accord, which was signed between British India and Tibet in 1914. The line was intended to serve as the boundary between the two territories and was named after Sir Henry McMahon, the British official who negotiated the accord. However, China has never officially recognized the McMahon Line as the border between India and Tibet, and has continued to claim large portions of territory that are currently under Indian control. This has led to a number of armed clashes and skirmishes between the two countries, including a major war in 1962. Despite ongoing efforts to resolve the dispute peacefully, it remains a source of tension between India and China. Both countries have continued to build up their military presence along the border, and there have been several incidents in recent years that have raised concerns about the potential for further conflict. The India-China border dispute has its roots in the complex history of the region, which has been shaped by a combination of political, cultural, and geographic factors. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, the area was caught up in the Great Game, a political and diplomatic struggle between the British and Russian empires for control of Central Asia. During this period, Britain sought to establish its influence in Tibet, which it viewed as a strategic buffer zone against Russian expansion. In 1913, British officials sent an expedition to Tibet to negotiate a treaty with the Tibetan government, but the negotiations failed. The following year, British officials met with Tibetan representatives in the Indian hill town of Simla, where they reached an agreement known as the Simla Accord. The accord included a number of provisions, including the recognition of Tibetan autonomy and the establishment of the McMahon Line as the boundary between British India and Tibet. However, the Chinese government, which had long claimed sovereignty over Tibet, was not party to the Simla Accord, and it continued to reject the McMahon Line as the official border between India and Tibet. In the decades that followed, the dispute over the border remained a source of tension between India and China, and there were several armed clashes and skirmishes along the border. The dispute came to a head in 1962, when the two countries went to war over the disputed territories. The war ended in a decisive Indian victory, but the border dispute continued to simmer, and there have been several incidents in recent years that have raised concerns about the potential for further conflict. The India-China border dispute remains a complex and sensitive issue, and both countries have made efforts to resolve it through diplomatic channels. However, the dispute continues to be a source of tension between the two countries, and it remains an important issue in regional and international politics.
If you like this video or any of the content we provide, please don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.